perfect spot to go to the bathroom. And then like crouching and there's like people coming by and you're just like, what do I do? Do I just like lay down? And is that better or worse?
Or you just like stand up like, hey, what's
like,
up, guys?
I was just foraging.
We wanna chase the night, wanna dance to the light, pull stars from the sky.
Hi, I'm Carrie.
And I'm Molly.
And you're listening to the Two Sisters on Adventures podcast. The Oregon Sampler episode, Wallowas, day 3 on trail.
If you're enjoying what you're listening, we'd welcome you to give us a rate and review on the podcast platform of your choice and help other people find ridiculous podcasts about us talking about crazy things too. And maybe learn something about getting on trail.
Yeah.
You never know.
So, this day, we woke up by Glacier Lake, which honestly was just stunningly beautiful. Actually, I think, if I'm being frank, everything in the Wallowas is stunningly beautiful.
And it's really fun to reminisce on it. You know, we're writing notes about what we remember. We're using what we tracked from our GPS watches, looking at pictures to kind of help us remember different elements. And then once again, there's multiple just like stories that we've told so many times that it's pretty easy to remember. But as we're going through this series, wow, every single day I'm just reminded by how beautiful the day on trail in the Wallowas was and just what a treasure that area of Oregon is.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's really fun because I feel like I just kind of have a smile on my face, like thinking about all these things. And honestly, again, even the mistakes that we made or kind of the things we did that were goofy that we definitely don't do anymore, it's just like, oh, that's kind of fun. Like, we were learning and we were just getting out there and going for it and doing our best. So,
exactly.
Yeah, so we woke up by Glacier Lake, which was stunningly beautiful. I feel like somewhere in my mind, I still had like this slight thought of like, maybe we could swim in the morning because it seemed like it would be so nice.
Yeah.
But we had a decently big day on trail. We were going to try to make it to Horseshoe Lake and kind of en route, we were going to summit Eagle Cap.
Yeah. So we got started, once again, having to do our all trails equation to figure out how many miles we actually had because it was going to be like 2 or 3 longer than what we were initially planning. And the first thing we had to do was ascend about 350 feet to the top of Glacier Pass.
And this was one of those things where I'm like, 350 feet, NBG, no big deal. We're just going to pop on our packs and race up that bad boy. I'm not worried about it at all.
But we've talked about this in the past. There's something about starting the morning with an incline that's just a little bit difficult. Like, that's where I think the JMT was so wonderful for us because we'd go over a pass like
in the
afternoon and then we'd descend a little and then we'd usually start our day with like a couple miles of descent, warm up the legs and then loop right back into the uphill. But once again, it was 300 feet.
Yeah. And it was not that far of a distance, but wow, I was like, okay, I am struggling.
Yeah,
a surprising amount.
And puffing. The heart was like,
it's like embarrassing, you know? And so we kind of made it to the top and all of a sudden we started seeing way more people, which was so fascinating. So Glacier Lake, not as many people seem to camp at it. And I think it's because it's an awkward distance from any trailhead, especially if you want to find a campsite at 1 p.m. or something. But it's kind of an awkward distance, it seems like, from a lot of trails. So a lot of people seem to camp at other hikes and do it as a day hike. So the night that we went up to Glacier Lake, we saw other people there, but not a huge amount of other people. And then we, like, as we started descending, I feel like we just met a ton of people.
And I also think that some people, they take the trail that goes up into the basin with like Moccasin Lake and then you can make a loop there. So I think some people will go up to the Glacier Pass and then turn around and go back too.
Yeah, exactly.
So we were heading into an area of the Wallowas that I would say is probably one of the highest trafficked areas, and for good reason. Yeah. We started descending the pass, obviously dodging horse apples along the way, and making our way down towards Moccasin Lake, which is just a gloriously beautiful area. And once again, like the green grass around all the lakes and the flowers and then the contrast of the peaks and the sky. It was just very beautiful to just soak it all in with your eyes.
Yeah. So one thing I started thinking about though is like there are so many people here and we're still going to go to Eagle Camp and summit it, and then we're going to go to a different lake. Oh my goodness, how are we going to be able to camp anywhere? But that was just like kind of in the very back of my mind because we had plenty to do.
These people
today.
who are, you know, I feel like our style of backpacking is always like a through hike type of backpack. rarely, I don't think we've ever done a trip where we've made like a base camp and just then like day hikes from it and then come back. And maybe at some point we will, but that's just not what we're about at this moment in time. But you could tell that a lot of these people maybe had been camping at Moccasin Lake for a few days. They had their hammocks up. They were reading books. They were like just relaxing and enjoying, and good for them. So we decided that we would cache like our beer cans and a couple items over behind a tree by the trail just while we summited Eagle Cap and then come back down.
I bet I left some chocolate milk there.
Yeah, really. To pick up and then continue along our way towards Horseshoe Lake. So, that day we cached our food and then we kind of started to head towards Eagle Cap. And I don't think there were any thunderstorms that day.
No, there weren't. So we felt good about going up there. It was a little hazy from like smoke, I think. But it was kind of funny because, we've been on these horse grade trails, and then going up Eagle Cap, it's not a horse grade trail.
Yeah.
So it's like suddenly the shift into a real like trail again. And I remember though, as we were going up, we saw some of those flowers that people call like Dr. Seuss flowers. They're the ones that are really just like so whimsical and silly looking. And they're
Western Pask.
Yeah, Western Pask.
And was that the first time we'd ever seen them?
In Oregon.
We
had seen them the year prior in Washington, and I'd been like, Molly, look at these beautiful flowers. We'll never see them outside of Washington. And then she was like, are those the Western Pask? And I was like, of course not. We're not in Washington. And then I'm like, oh no, they are.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
We kind of started heading up Eagle Cap, and we met some people on the way down. Like they were going down, we were going up, and I feel like they were like, oh, it's just so pretty. You're gonna love it.
And like before we got to the actual ascent, we went past Mirror Lake, which there were a lot of people who had pitched their tents there.
That was the one that really made me nervous about finding a campsite.
Oh, honestly. And it's
stunning
because
lake.
People are backpacking there and they're setting up a base camp and they're spending multiple days. So it's tough if you're trying to just kind of like walk through and find a spot at the end of the day. But that was a really beautiful area too, because it was reflecting Eagle Cap and just beautiful scenery. And then we made it to like, there was a sign. I don't remember what the sign said. Maybe it was like, 1.5 miles to the top of Eagle Cap. And then the trail it was never really scrambly, but there was definitely a couple areas where it was a little exposed.
Yeah.
Kind of adventurous. And then Eagle Cap is just so funny because it's kind of reminiscent of a dome, but there's all these trees on the backside. So you get to this one spot and then you just start like switchbacking through trees and bush until you kind of break out and you're on the top.
And one thing that was kind of funny about Eagle Cap in my memory is I feel like I had dealt with so much less exposure back then than I have now.
Oh, interesting.
And I do remember in my mind there were a couple spots where I just felt like really nervous about the footing. Like it felt like, I'm gonna have to make this step from like this trail that feels a little bit eroded to this other trail that feels a little bit eroded, and I'm nervous to do it. So it's kind of fun to like look back and reminisce on that and say, I don't think that would bother me at all now. I think I just keep going. Another thing we were talking about earlier before we were recording this was how I don't remember this being particularly hard physically going up that trail. A, I probably had been freed from a bunch of weight, so I was like, yay. But B, we were talking about she said it was a battle of the wills.
Yeah, so I don't know. We alternate who leads when we go on hikes, but for some reason at the beginning, I feel like I was on the front a lot of the time. And so for me, a hiking style I'll employ on the uphill is like I'll keep a pretty fast pace and then pause for 30 seconds and then go again. And Carrie was in her uphill gear where she just wanted to maintain a little bit of a slower pace but continuous.
Very steady.
And so Carrie was in front and I was kind of like nipping at her heels trying to pass her. So then I would pass her and then I would stop and rest, and then Carrie would get a little bit irritated because she just wanted to keep going, and we kept like leapfrogging, and Rachel was somewhere.
she was around.
But I feel like we kind of had to figure out like, well, what pace are we going to actually go by?
And
it's
I think
funny that you did lead in the end.
I feel like a lot of the time I end up leading now. I think.
You do?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there, but I guess I was the winner. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, I think that we've kind of come to the part of our lives, though, where we prefer to just be steady and not really take rest breaks. Like, I feel like even when you lead now, you don't want to take rest breaks. You just kind of want to keep steady.
That's correct. And I wonder if it's because, like, I was freed of my pack and a little lighter.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
And I think we were also trying to hurry because we wanted to get a campsite and all that other stuff. But it wasn't, like, the most insane grade. Like, it was a pretty relaxed grade. But thank God it wasn't all the insane switchbacks from
and
the day before.
Eagle Cap is really awesome. I wrote down that it was 9,544 feet of elevation. And
which
once
is very
again,
high
you've
for
got
Oregon.
the Cascades volcanoes that will hit higher than that. But otherwise, there are multiple peaks in the Wallowas range that then would be some of the highest ones in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, this trail, you get high and you stay high, and it's just such a fun experience in a state where there's not a ton of high elevation hikes.
Trails, yeah.
We hung out at the top of Eagle Cap for quite a while, and it was just really fun because down to our right was actually Glacier Lake, and it felt like very close, like you could almost touch it, and you could see so much of the Wallowas. There was a little bit of smoke rolling in, so things were a little bit hazy, but I feel like I had this feeling like I could just stay there forever, really, if we didn't have somewhere to be and just enjoy. It was really cool.
I loved the top of Eagle Cap because not only could we see where we had been, like I think we could see to Aneroid Pass, right?
I think so.
But we also could see where we were going to be, and we could see like all of the granite, passes, peaks, all of that stuff. So it was just unbelievably good views. And I feel like we stayed there for a pretty good while, taking pictures.
Yeah.
We ate our snacks. I think we had our lunch up there.
Hopefully.
And of course, there was a squirrel who desperately wanted our food. So we had to be super on top of where our packs were, where our food were. Like, Rachel, he's getting kind of close to your stuff, you know? And I just feel like it was just such a fun and successful moment, though, because we felt like, oh, we're accomplishing our goals. And there's been some uncertainty at the beginning of this trip. But like, here we are. We're getting our stuff done.
Totally. After about 40 minutes of just enjoying the views and soaking them in on top of Eagle Cap, we turned around to retrace our steps back down to Moccasin Lake to pick up our bear can and the rest of our gear. And then we just kind of continued along, and this area of the Wallowas is just beautiful. It's dotted with lakes, so it's kind of fun. You walk along a lake, and then you'll do a downhill, and then you'll walk along another lake, and then do another downhill, and kind of it's just this sequence that repeats itself until we were going to arrive at Horseshoe Lake.
Also, can I just say, I'm realizing I think we've only ever cached things 2 times in our whole lives. And it was when we were climbing Eagle Cap and also at Trail Crest on the John Muir Trail before we climbed Mount Whitney. We cached our food.
No way.
So 2 worthwhile spots to kind of cache your food.
Definitely.
Which I feel like we've never really had an opportunity because we never are on a long distance trail. And then also summiting peaks at the same time, but that was a good option. So,
and I'm just kind of like reflecting on some of the lakes that we walked past because our plan was to camp at Horseshoe Lake and we wanted to do that. But I feel like I also had to be on the lookout for campsites as we got closer to that area because there were so many people camping. And there was one lake called Douglas Lake, and there was an open spot there. And I do remember it just being a pretty nice lake, where once again, there was kind of this backdrop of a peak, kind of like Aneroid Lake had been. And I feel like we talked very briefly about if we should stay there and decided, no, we like need to continue on our way. But yeah, there were just like a lot of nice places. And if you wanted to spend several days backpacking and either going from lake to lake in that basin, you could do some fairly short days to just soak it all in if that was kind of your speed.
I also remember, I feel like the crowds just dropped like the second we left the Mirror Lake area.
Yeah.
Like we were kind of there and, you know, there's just people everywhere you look, like every campsite, every tree has like hammocks and all that kind of stuff. And then as soon as we kind of got out of that area, it felt nice and private once again. So that actually is a nice piece about the Wallowas is there were a lot of people in some like locations, but in a lot of the other areas, actually, there were really not that many people.
Yeah, and looking at a map of the Wallowas, you know, we did a pretty popular kind of portion of that loop. But there are valleys that stem off and trail systems all over almost every direction from the kind of that main basin. And I'm sure that you could put together an itinerary that was pretty low trafficked and still see some really beautiful areas if you just wanted to do, you know, a little bit more research in that specific geographical region.
Yeah. And so as we kind of descended, I feel like this, once again, so many wildflowers. It was a little more forested than our other days' trips had been. So it was kind of a totally different vibe. I have a video that I really love of us walking, and I'm taking a video of the flowers, and Rachel's telling some story about going tubing, and then of course I somehow also caught my like tripping over a log. And then there was also these other sections. It was definitely way more forested, so we must have kind of dropped down.
I didn't even trip over the log. I tripped over the edge of the trail. I'm pretty
sure.
I
don't know. I'll put it in. I'll put it on the social. And
Carrie
you guys
was like,
can
I'm
decide.
so excited to share this video on social media.
She didn't fall all the way down. It was just a little trip. And I never catch stuff like that, so it's funny.
And it's very weird. I think of myself as a fairly good person, but my automatic response any time someone trips or falls is to laugh. Why do I do that?
And honestly, I feel like I trip more than you trip, so maybe that's why I think this video is so funny. But
maybe so.
Anyway, and then I have another video that we were laughing at because it's just like so much horse poop on that section. It was just like, I think we were like, oh my goodness, is this like the explosive diarrhea section? Just like horse poop, horse poop, horse poop. So you could hardly walk for not stepping in the horse poop.
Oh my gosh.
But then we finally made it to Horseshoe Lake, and that was honestly one of those spots that was just so quiet and beautiful. There was only one other person camping there that I saw. And then this is again a leave no trace mistake that we made, but now we know. We didn't know then. We camped on an island there, which I think probably the issue would just be it was too close to water on all sides. Didn't know that, but it was still like such a fun place to, even if we hadn't camped there, I think we still would have just hung out on the island and that would have still been very fun. There was a fire pit, I believe, there. Yeah. So other people had obviously hung out there before. Yeah. But yeah, we kind of stayed on that little island and
we went swimming.
And I will tell you, it was a terrible place to camp because in the morning, camping on an island, our entire tent, everything we had was completely soaked. So I would say yes, you could probably still go there and camp on the island and probably get away with it, but I would not recommend it because you will be fully soaked, all of your gear. So we got we spanked ourselves.
We had to really dry everything out the next morning. But this was, I think we got there at a reasonable time.
Yeah, for the first time ever.
Fairly warm, and so we were so excited to go swimming. So we jumped into the lake, and it was not all that cold, so it was pretty pleasant for a swim, and honestly just really enjoyable. We'd jump off of our island into the water, swim some laps, and then when we got out and we're kind of drying off, we were admiring the view across the lake, and we were admiring these two kind of peaks and this pass in between, and they were kind of brown red in color, and we realized that was Polaris Pass. So here where we were camping, we could actually look and see one of our pass we'd come over on our second day, and kind of just fun to just see it from a different angle. And now we're on our third day on trail.
And honestly, it was also so fun to be there because it was like we had this deep lake that we got to swim in. I feel like a lot of the other lakes that we would have swam in they were shallow on the edges and definitely got deeper, but we just got right into deep water. And so that was kind of fun to not like touch any rocks or moss on the bottom. And there was like the cool pockets and the warm pockets. And it was such a beautiful lake, and I would totally recommend staying there. Totally. Although I will say it was funny because this was the second campsite on trail where when I went to use the bathroom in the morning, I thought I had chosen this place that was very secluded, and then there's a trail apparently close enough, and somebody walked by. That happened there for me as well. I was like, I found the perfect spot to go to the bathroom, and then like crouching, and there's like people coming by, and you're just like, what do I do? Do I just like lay down? And is that better or worse?
Or you just like stand up like, hey, what's up, guys?
I was just foraging.
Yeah, I don't know. We're thinking about this because after our first night on trail,
at Aneroid
day
Lake.
2 at Aneroid Lake, I was, hunting for a good spot to make a cat hole, and I think I was digging it, and I like looked across the meadow, and there's like these people, like I think they were camping over there, and I'm like, dang it, I'm in full view of them.
And I did the same thing too at that lake, so it was just kind of funny, and it was also just funny because we had to find right spots for our 2 tents, and we found them, but our friend Rachel has a picture of us both trying to lay on our tarp, trying to figure out if we can fit where we're going to lay, and she just always kind of laughs at us because we sleep in such a tiny tent. We're like basically glued together. We just had a lot of good laughs that night. I feel like we were in high spirits.
We finally played phase 10, and it was really fun because we just all like popped a squat on our sit pads around the bear can, and then we played phase 10, and it was so fun. And then I think that the stars came out, and I even saw a shooting star that night, which makes sense kind of as we're kind of in that August range. But yeah, it was just a really pleasant end to a day where we'd covered some beautiful terrain. We'd gotten to hit the summit of Eagle Cap.
Very successful, very chill.
And out of all the stress of trying to find a campsite, we had found a spot to pitch our tent and just enjoy spending time in the Wallowas.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Two Sisters on Adventures podcast. If you liked what you heard about today and want to see photos or videos of Molly falling on trail and us walking on horse poop, then you can follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Two Sisters on Adventures. Bye.
And,
nope.
And
We're
if
not
you
saying bye.
like what you're listening to and you'd like to see a video of it, you can find us on YouTube for the video podcast. Also, if you want to check out information that we have on our website, twosistersonadventures.com, feel free to check that out. And as always, we love any feedback that you have to give us or ideas for future episodes.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Bye.